I was holding the keys to an $850,000 penthouse, my wedding gift for my son Ethan, when an unknown number texted me, "Don't go to your son's wedding, run." I assumed it was some twisted prank and called back immediately. The voice on the other end belonged to someone I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. What he told me during that 3-minute call shattered everything I believed about my only child, and I'm grateful you're here with me today. Before I explain what happened next, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. One quick note. While this story includes fictionalized elements shaped for reflection and storytelling, the lessons about family betrayal and the price of justice are very real. Some details have been adjusted for privacy, but the truth at its core remains. Now let me tell you what happened next. The penthouse keys felt icy in my hand. $850,000, the most expensive wedding gift I'd ever given. Standing alone in that vacant Midtown Atlanta apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the skyline I'd helped build over 4 decades, the cost felt meaningless. What mattered was the expression I imagined on Ethan's face when I handed him those keys. The October sunlight washed the room in gold. I'd arrived in this city back in 1984 with nothing but a high school diploma and an unrelenting drive. 40 years later, I own 10 buildings across Atlanta. Not bad for a kid who once slept in his car between construction jobs. My footsteps echoed across the hardwood as I walked through the empty living room. Ethan would love it. The sleek kitchen, the balcony overlooking Piedmont Park. Everything I dreamed of having at his age but couldn't afford until my 50s. Linda would have cried seeing this place. My wife passed away 8 years ago and never got to meet the woman Ethan planned to marry. But she would have understood this gift wasn't just generosity. It was an apology for missed dinners and baseball games I'd worked through, a promise that Ethan would start his marriage better than we had started ours. The closing documents were laid out on the counter, waiting for my signature. I planned to sign and surprise Ethan with the keys at next Friday's rehearsal dinner. 9 days until the wedding. 9 days until I watched my son walk down the aisle. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message sent a chill through me. Don't go to your son's wedding. Run. I stared at the screen, reading it again and again before pressing call. Endless ringing, no voicemail, just a hollow mechanical tone that felt mocking. I tried again and again. By the 10th attempt, my hand was shaking. The rational side of me, the part that had closed million-dollar deals without blinking, told me it was nothing, a wrong number, a tasteless joke. But another voice, the instinct that had guided me through 40 years of business, whispered otherwise. I forced my focus back to the paperwork and signed each page with stiff precision. The penthouse now belonged to Ethan. Whatever that message meant, it wouldn't change my love for my son. I locked the door and slipped the keys into my pocket, where they suddenly felt heavier than before. The elevator ride down felt unusually long. In the parking garage, I glanced over my shoulder more than once. Sitting in my car, I reread the message one final time, deleted it, and started the engine. I told myself an anonymous warning wouldn't ruin my son's big day. I had no idea that 9 days later, I'd wish I'd listened. Late Friday night, I'd already tried that number 17 times. When my phone finally rang, I nearly dropped the glass in my hand. Hello? My voice sounded strained. Richard, this is Daniel Brooks. The name hit me hard. Daniel Brooks, my former business partner, the man I once trusted with half my company until addiction tore everything apart. We'd split ways through lawyers and bitterness after I bought him out while he spiraled into rehab. Daniel, after all these years? He apologized for the cryptic message, his voice rough with age. He said he needed to be sure before telling me what he overheard. I tightened my grip on the phone and asked what he'd heard. He told me that Tuesday morning he was at a midtown coffee shop near Piedmont Park, working on his laptop, when Ethan walked in with a woman and a man in a suit. They sat at a corner table for 40 minutes. He heard everything. My stomach dropped. Everything about what? About me. He said the woman, Claire, Ethan's fiancée, kept saying I barely reviewed documents anymore. Ethan laughed, saying I trusted him completely and signed whatever he put in front of me. The taste in my mouth turned sour. Signed what? Trust papers. Estate restructuring. But they weren't talking about protecting assets. They were discussing liquidation. After the honeymoon, they already had a buyer lined up. An attorney assured them everything was foolproof because I'd authorized transfers months earlier. I said it was impossible, but even as the words left my mouth, doubt crept in. Had Ethan asked me to sign something under the guise of estate planning? Daniel said there was more. He heard Ethan joke about assisted living, about how fast things would move once I was declared unfit. Claire mentioned knowing medical professionals who could provide the right diagnosis for a price. My vision blurred as I stared at the framed photo on my desk from Ethan's graduation 5 years earlier, his arm around my shoulders, both of us smiling. I asked Daniel why he was telling me this now. He reminded me that I'd forced him into rehab years ago, saving his life even when he hated me for it. He'd been sober 6 years and now ran an addiction recovery program. He was at that cafe for a client meeting when he heard Ethan's voice. He almost left until he heard the plan. He warned me everything was set to move immediately after the wedding, and that I didn't have weeks to figure this out. I had days. The call ended, leaving me alone in the dark office, staring at that graduation photo. 5 years ago, Ethan had hugged me and said, "Thanks for everything, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." I wondered what had changed between that moment and a Tuesday morning in a midtown coffee shop. My hands shook as I opened the filing cabinet. Somewhere inside were the documents Ethan had asked me to sign. Estate planning, he'd said. Routine trust restructuring. I had no idea what I was about to uncover. Saturday morning arrived far too quickly. I'd slept barely 3 hours before tearing through my home office, digging through files, hunting for the papers Daniel had warned me about. Filing cabinet drawers slammed onto the floor. Manila folders spilled across my desk. 40 years of business records lay scattered like debris, but I didn't care. I needed to find what Ethan had maneuvered me into signing. Then the memory surfaced, sharp and unmistakable. 3 weeks earlier, late September, a Wednesday evening around 7, Ethan had shown up carrying a leather portfolio. "Dad, my attorney needs you to sign some estate planning documents." I'd been reviewing contracts for a property acquisition and barely looked up. Estate planning? Just routine trust restructuring. It protects the family assets. He set the papers on my desk as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. "Robert Caldwell recommended we update these every few years." My attorney's name. Of course I trusted it. "Your attorney talked to Robert?" "Yeah, they coordinated on the language." Ethan smiled that familiar, easy smile. "You know how lawyers are. Everything in triplicate." I picked up my pen. "Where do I sign?" "Initial here, sign here, date here." His finger slid smoothly down the pages. "We can talk wedding details while you're at it. Claire wants your opinion on the reception menu." And like a blind fool, I signed page after page, barely reading, debating salmon versus steak, while authorizing my own destruction. Ethan gathered the documents, kissed my cheek, and left whistling. That was 3 weeks ago. Now, standing in my wrecked office, I found the copies. The folder was labeled Estate Planning 2024 in my own handwriting. I'd filed them myself, never questioning what I'd actually signed. My hands trembled as I spread the documents across the desk. Not trust restructuring, power of attorney, granting Ethan authority over my financial decisions. Property transfer authorizations to something called Harper Family, LLC. I opened my laptop, fingers clumsy on the keyboard. Georgia Secretary of State Business Registry. Search, Harper Family, LLC. The results loaded. Registered August 15th, 2024. Managing member, Ethan Michael Harper. Members, Ethan Michael Harper. My name was nowhere. Not as owner, not as member, not even as registered agent. Harper Family, LLC. My family name on a company I didn't own. Created by my own son to strip me of everything. I kept reading. A preliminary sales agreement between Harper Family LLC and Northcrest Capital Group, dated September 15th, 2024. Purchase price, $18 million. Property descriptions, all 10 of my buildings. Market value, $45 million. They were selling my life's work for pennies on the dollar. The attorney's name appeared on every footer. Jonathan Reeves. Esque. I stared at the name. Jonathan Reeves. It tugged at my memory like something unfinished, something I couldn't quite place. But there was no time to chase that thought. My signature stared back at me again and again. Richard Harper, signed and dated September 20th, 2024. The very day Ethan had arrived with that leather portfolio and his practiced lies. I'd been proud he wanted to learn the business, proud he cared about estate planning, proud he wanted to be responsible. He had been learning, all right, learning exactly how to take everything I'd built. I grabbed my phone and scrolled until I found the contact I needed. Daniel Cruz, private investigator. I'd used him for background checks, tenant screenings, and due diligence. Now I needed him to investigate my own son. The phone rang twice before he answered. Daniel, it's Richard Harper. I need deep background on 2 people, and I need it fast. How fast? Yesterday wasn't soon enough. Before I tell you what the investigator uncovered, I need to hear from you. If you're still with me, comment, I'm listening. This next revelation changes everything, and I want to make sure you're ready. One quick note. Parts of this story are adjusted for privacy and storytelling. If you need every detail to be literal fact, this may be a good place to pause. But if you're here for the truth beneath it all, let's go deeper. By Saturday afternoon, I'd made the call. Daniel Cruz answered immediately. I need full background on Claire Morgan and attorney Jonathan Reeves, everything. Give me 4 hours. When he called back at 7:30, his voice was grim. Claire Morgan had accumulated $340,000 in credit card debt in just 18 months. Luxury travel, designer shopping, non-stop spending. Ethan carried $95,000 in personal loans. He'd bought a Porsche he couldn't afford and signed a lease on an $8,500 a month apartment in August. They were both drowning financially. The timeline snapped into focus. Harper Family LLC formed in August. Sales agreement with Northcrest Capital, $18 million for properties worth $45. A massive loss. There's more, Daniel said, pausing. Claire's legal name before 2019 was Emily Reeves. The room spun. Reeves, as in Jonathan Reeves, her brother. She'd changed her name in March 2019, a complete identity overhaul. The memory hit me like a freight train. 15 years ago, Jonathan Reeves, a 20-year-old intern, bright, eager. I'd mentored him personally. Then I caught him falsifying property appraisals, making failing investments look profitable to deceive buyers. I trusted you, I'd told him. It was one small mistake, he said. It's fraud, I replied. You're fired. His face had twisted with rage. You're destroying my career. You destroyed it yourself, I'd replied. Get out. At the door, he turned back. You'll regret this, Mr. Harper. One day, you'll regret this. I'd dismissed it as an empty threat. Now I understood. After you fired him, Daniel Cruz continued, Jonathan Reeves was quietly blacklisted from major firms. He's been practicing out of a small East Atlanta office ever since. His career never recovered. I pulled up Jonathan's website, those same calculating eyes, just 15 years older. His sister would have been 13 when I fired him. How had she met Ethan? Daniel called again 30 minutes later. Atlanta Real Estate Summit, June 2021, the conference you sent Ethan to. She approached him at the networking reception. They were dating within a month. She hunted him. Yes, sir. My son had been targeted. Claire Morgan, born Emily Reeves, had changed her identity, tracked his movements, and positioned herself to reach me through him. But then I remembered Daniel Brooks' account. Ethan's laughter about the old man, his excitement over liquidating my assets. She manipulated him at first, I said slowly, but he chose to continue. He knew about the forged documents. He joked about putting me in assisted living. I checked the calendar. October 12th. Wedding in 6 days. This wasn't just greed. It was a 15-year revenge plan. The Reeves family wanted everything I'd built, and Ethan became their willing partner. I stood at the window, staring into the dark. They think they've won. They have no idea what 40 years of business experience can do in 6 days. What's my next move? Monday morning, I'm calling my attorney. We're going to war. Sunday evening arrived heavy with everything I now knew. Ethan invited me to dinner at my own home, his childhood home, for a pre-wedding family celebration. I smiled as I opened the door. The performance had begun. Ethan and Claire arrived with wine and flowers. I hugged them, offered compliments. Claire's dress played the proud fiancé perfectly. Inside, my thoughts were darker. She's wearing white, practicing for Saturday. I wondered how long she'd worn this mask, whether 3 years of deception was a personal record. Over dinner, Ethan gushed about their honeymoon, 2 weeks in the Maldives, overwater bungalows, private beaches. Sounds expensive. We've been saving, he said easily. They were drowning in debt. Claire smiled sweetly. Richard, have you thought about retirement? You've worked so hard for so long. I played along. Eventually, enjoy the golden years. Let the younger generation handle the stress. Every question probed my plans, my willingness to step back. Ethan leaned forward. Actually, Dad, after the honeymoon, I'd love to talk about taking on more responsibility. We can talk about that, I said, knowing they planned to take everything. Then Claire added casually, My brother's been so helpful with the legal work. Jonathan really understands estate planning. My heart pounded, but my voice stayed even. Your brother's an attorney? That's wonderful. I don't think you've mentioned him before. Oh, we're very close, she said. He's been practicing for years. I filed that away. She was acknowledging Jonathan publicly now. Excuse me a moment. I stood and walked toward the bathroom. In the hallway, I activated my phone's voice recorder and set it on the bookshelf near the dining room, then closed the bathroom door loudly. Through the app, I heard everything. Ethan's voice, low. You think he suspects anything? Claire replied. He signed everything without reading. Your father's too trusting. Jonathan says the documents are foolproof. Once we're married and back from the honeymoon, we move fast. My brother knows Richard better than Richard knows himself. 15 years planning every detail. Ethan laughed. Old man has no idea what's coming. He'll be in some assisted living facility while we're running his empire. Our empire. We've earned it. Damn right, she said. I stood there, hands braced on the sink, hearing every word. My son, my only child, laughing about destroying me. I took 3 deep breaths, splashed cold water on my face, and returned with a smile. The rest of dinner was agony. Flowers, seating charts, the band. I nodded and smiled, playing the oblivious father. At 9, they prepared to leave. Ethan hugged me tight. Love you, Dad. Thanks for everything. I love you too, son. The words felt like glass in my throat. The last time I'd say them, and mean it. After they left, I retrieved my phone and played the recording. Ethan's voice filled the empty house. Old man has no idea what's coming. I had my confirmation. Every word recorded, time-stamped, crystal clear. Ethan wasn't just a victim. He was an eager participant, laughing about putting his father in assisted living, planning to steal 40 years of my life's work. Claire, Emily, had hunted him for 3 years, and Ethan embraced the hunt. I saved the recording with trembling fingers. Monday morning, I'd take this to my attorney, but first, I needed to make sure justice would be loud, public, and complete. Monday morning, I sat across from Robert Caldwell in his downtown Atlanta office. The evidence folders between us told a damning story, and I'd barely begun. Robert, tell me what you know about Jonathan Reeves. He typed, then looked up, his face changing. Jonathan Reeves. You fired him in 2009. I remember, he read on. Falsifying property appraisals. You reported him. He was blacklisted. He's been advising my son on how to steal my company using insider knowledge from his internship, I said. That's a massive ethics breach. Robert leaned forward. His sister changed her name and dated Ethan for 3 years, a coordinated family operation. I spread the evidence across the conference table. Forged power of attorney documents. Harper Family LLC formed with Ethan listed as sole owner. A sales agreement valuing my properties at $18 million when they were worth $45 million. Daniel Cruz's investigation report documenting Emily Reeves's name change and a 3-year targeting timeline. Then I played the recording from Sunday night. Ethan's voice filled the office. Old man has no idea what's coming. He'll be in some assisted living facility while we're running his empire. Claire's voice followed. My brother knows Richard better than Richard knows himself. 15 years planning every detail. With each revelation, Robert Caldwell's expression grew darker. This isn't just civil fraud, he said quietly. This is criminal conspiracy, wire fraud, forgery, identity manipulation. Jonathan used confidential knowledge from 15 years ago to create documents that felt legitimate to you because he knew exactly which papers you'd trust, how you review them, and what language you accept. Robert pulled out a legal pad. Here's the plan. First, we challenge every document you signed on the basis of fraudulent inducement. Not incompetence, but deception by trusted family. Second, we file a formal complaint with the Georgia Bar Association against Jonathan Reeves for misuse of privileged information and advising a felony conspiracy. Third, we contact the FBI's white-collar crime division. The fake Northcrest Capital Group deal qualifies as wire fraud. Fourth, we seek an emergency injunction to freeze Harper Family LLC. Fifth, we change your will immediately. Everything goes to the Atlanta Housing Foundation. Ethan receives nothing. Irrevocable. Robert paused, then added, "And the wedding itself?" I met his eyes. "I want everyone to know. Family, friends, business associates. Public exposure means no walking it back. Ethan will face criminal charges. He made his choice. He laughed about putting me in assisted living." My voice stayed calm. "They planned this in darkness. I'll expose it in daylight." Robert nodded. "Then help me arrange the final pieces." The week moved fast. Tuesday, I met Special Agent Elena Rodriguez from the FBI. She took the case immediately. Wire fraud, conspiracy, forged documents. Federal charges pending. Wednesday, I signed the new will in Robert's office. My entire estate transferred to the Atlanta Housing Foundation. Ethan, fully disinherited, filed and notarized. Thursday, Robert submitted the ethics complaint to the Georgia Bar. Jonathan Reeves now faced disbarment for exploiting privileged client information to commit crimes. Friday morning, a judge approved the emergency injunction. Harper Family LLC was frozen. No transfers, no sales, nothing. All week, I kept up the facade with Ethan. Texts about seating charts, vendors, last-minute details. I replied with practiced enthusiasm, playing the proud father one final time. Friday evening, I sat alone in my office reviewing everything. Legal safeguards in place, FBI ready, evidence secured. The wedding was tomorrow. I'd spent 40 years building an empire. Ethan and the Reeves siblings had spent 3 years trying to steal it, but they'd made one fatal mistake. They'd taught me their entire plan. Tomorrow, I would return the education. Saturday morning, October 19th, I stood before my bedroom mirror, adjusting my tie for my son's wedding. My hands were steady. 40 years in business had taught me that the most critical negotiations require the calmest demeanor. I chose my charcoal gray suit. From my safe, I took Linda's wedding ring and slipped it into my pocket, a reminder of what family was meant to be. On my dresser sat photos spanning 3 decades. Ethan at 5, gap-toothed and smiling. Ethan at 15, sullen, but still mine. Ethan at 25, arm around my shoulders. When had I lost him? I arrived at Piedmont Garden Venue at 2. The manicured grounds filled with 150 guests, friends, colleagues, family, none of them aware of what they were about to witness. Handshakes and hugs followed. Compliments about my generosity, about the penthouse, each word cut deeper. Then I saw him, Jonathan Reeves, 15 years older, same calculating eyes, expensive suit, confident stride, playing the proud brother. Our eyes met across the garden. He smirked, believing he'd won. I nodded politely and looked away. Ethan found me before the ceremony, nerves vibrating through him. "Dad, thank you for everything, the penthouse, the support, all of it." I studied his face, searching for guilt. "You're my son," I said quietly. "I'd do anything for you." It was the last honest thing I'd say to him. "I know things haven't been easy since Mom died," he added, "but Claire's family is my family now. Her brother Jonathan, too." "Family," I repeated. "That matters." The ceremony began at 3, a traditional outdoor wedding beneath a flower-draped arbor. With Linda gone, I walked Ethan down the aisle, delivering my son to his fate. Emily, Claire, stood at the altar in white. 3 years of performance, flawlessly executed. Vows were exchanged, rings slid into place. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Applause erupted. I clapped mechanically, watching Ethan kiss his co-conspirator while 150 people celebrated what they believed was love. They had no idea. Cocktail hour stretched from 4 to 5. I mingled, played my part. Jonathan and Emily whispered near the bar, celebrating their scheme. Ethan laughed with his groomsmen, relieved everything had gone according to plan. "Are you giving a toast, Richard?" someone asked. "Yes," I replied. "I have words prepared." Dinner began at 6. Guests settled at their tables. Ethan and Claire sat at the head table. I sat nearby, barely touching my food. Andrew, the wedding coordinator, approached. "Mr. Harper, we're ready for the toast." I stood and walked toward the microphone. Officer Thompson was stationed near the exits, exactly where I'd arranged. Conversations quieted. Ethan raised his glass, grinning. Claire smiled confidently. Jonathan Reeves leaned back, completely at ease. I tapped the microphone. Sharp feedback cut through the room. Complete silence followed. 150 faces turned toward me. I looked at Ethan, then Claire, then Jonathan, and took a breath. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, I want to speak about trust, about family, and about betrayal." The room remained quiet except for the gentle clink of champagne glasses. Guests, colleagues, friends, all looked at me expectantly. Ethan beamed from the head table. Claire's practiced smile didn't falter. Jonathan sat comfortably, unaware of what was coming. "They had no idea their world was about to collapse," I said. "Thank you all for being here. As Ethan's father, I've looked forward to this day for years. But tonight, I must address a different kind of partnership, the one built on lies." Ethan's smile faltered. Claire froze. "3 days ago, I received a warning not to attend this wedding," I continued. I pulled out my phone. "This is from Sunday night, our family dinner." I pressed play. "You think he suspects anything?" the old man asked. "No way. The documents are foolproof. Once we're married, we move fast. 15 years planning this. He has no idea what's coming. He'll be in assisted living while we run his empire." The recording ended. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Let me show you what this means." I held up the papers. Power of attorney documents I had signed 3 weeks ago, buried in wedding paperwork. Transfer documents putting all my properties into Harper Family LLC, registered in August with Ethan as the sole managing member. I held up another document, a sales agreement between Harper Family LLC and Northcrest Capital Group. Sale price, $18 million for properties worth $45 million, a $27 million loss. The numbers hung in the air. "And why?" I continued. "Does Claire have $340,000 in credit card debt? Why does Ethan have $95,000 in personal loans for a Porsche he doesn't own? They've been drowning in debt for 18 months. Ethan stood. "Dad, you don't understand." "No, Ethan, you don't understand who you're partnering with." I turned to Jonathan. "Jonathan, tell everyone why I fired you in 2009. His jaw tightened. "You were my intern. You falsified property appraisals. I fired you and made sure every major firm in Atlanta knew. You've spent 15 years blacklisted." The room murmured in shock. Jonathan is Claire's brother. Her legal name until March 2019 was Emily Reeves. She changed her name and met Ethan at the June 2021 Atlanta Real Estate Summit. This 3-year campaign was revenge. I looked at my son. "Ethan, I hoped you were a victim, but that recording proves otherwise. You knew about these documents. You laughed about putting me in assisted living. You called my company our empire." Ethan's facade crumbled. "So here's what happens," I continued. "I have executed a new will. Every asset I own, all $45 million in real estate, all cash accounts, all investments, will be donated to the Atlanta Housing Foundation. Ethan, you inherit nothing. Claire, you inherit nothing. Jonathan, you face criminal fraud charges." I signaled. Officer Thompson and 2 more officers entered. "Jonathan Reeves, Claire Reeves, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and wire fraud. Ethan Harper, you're being detained for questioning." The room erupted. Jonathan tried to run, but Officer Thompson blocked him. Claire grabbed Ethan's arm, but he pulled away. Guests either froze in shock or rushed to the doors. I watched as my son, my only child, was led away in handcuffs alongside the woman he had married hours ago. The wedding was over. So was my family. I drove home alone Saturday night while Ethan sat in the police station. The wedding venue disappeared in my rearview mirror. 150 guests, a ruined celebration, handcuffs instead of congratulations. My phone buzzed. Philip Oren called. "Richard, I heard what happened. Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Philip. Thank you for the warning. I'm sorry it came to this." "Don't be. You gave me truth when your own son gave you lies." After 15 years, Philip and I had found our way back, but I'd lost Ethan in the process. I thought about the mother-son trips Margaret had planned, museums, baseball games, weekend getaways. She raised him alone too often. Did that make him resentful? Did he see me as a bank account because I was rarely there? Other children grow up with absent fathers and don't become thieves. Ethan made his choice. Sunday morning, 7 a.m., I drove to the Midtown penthouse, my wedding gift. $850,000 worth of real estate, with views of the city I'd helped build over 40 years. I let myself in with the keys still in my pocket. The apartment was empty, just floor-to-ceiling windows and the sunrise over Atlanta's skyline. I stood there, holding the keys, thinking of everything I had wanted this gift to mean. I bought this penthouse to give Ethan a start I never had. I wanted him to see the views I'd worked decades to earn. I wanted to honor Margaret's memory by being generous to our son. Instead, I'd spent $850,000 on a gift that would never be given. "What would you say, sweetheart?" I whispered to Margaret, wherever she was. "Would you tell me I was too harsh? That I should forgive our son?" I could almost hear her response. She'd say family is important, but also that values matter, that honesty matters, and that betrayal cannot be rewarded, even if committed by someone you love. I reached into my pocket and pulled out her wedding ring, kept in my safe since her death 8 years ago. I'd carried it to the wedding, a reminder of the woman who made our family possible. I defended what we built together, but I lost my son in the process. My phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Dad, please, can we talk?" I stared at the message. Didn't delete it, didn't respond, just stared. Maybe someday, not today, not soon. I looked out at Atlanta one last time. The city stretched before me, familiar, vast, and unchanged. I'd fired a dishonest intern 15 years ago. His family had manipulated my son and orchestrated a conspiracy that took 3 years to execute. Jonathan and Emily Reeves would face criminal fraud charges. Ethan would face consequences for his part. I had protected my life's work, but standing in the empty penthouse, holding keys to a gift my son would never receive, I wasn't sure what I had truly won. 40 years building an empire from nothing, defending it against a family conspiracy rooted in a decade-old grudge. The Reeves siblings would face justice. My assets were secure. Justice had been served. Yet I had lost my son. I placed the keys on the kitchen counter and walked out, leaving the penthouse as empty as I felt. Some victories cost more than their worth. That's my story. As I stood there, I realized I'd won the battle, but lost what mattered most. And if you're listening to these grandparent stories, here's what I want you to understand. Don't let pride cost you your family. Don't spend decades building an empire only to find you never built a relationship with your child. I was so focused on protecting what I'd created that I forgot to protect who it was for. God gave me a second chance when Philip Warren called to warn me. But I wonder if he was asking a deeper question. Is justice more important than mercy? Is being right more important than being a father? I defended my principles. I exposed betrayal. I ensured consequences. Every decision I made was legally and morally sound. Yet now, at 72, I eat dinner alone every night. That is the cost of being right. My advice to you, especially if you share your own grandparents' stories, is this. When someone you love betrays you, yes, protect yourself. Yes, demand accountability. But also ask yourself, 10 years from now, what will I regret more? Letting them get away with it or losing them forever? I chose justice. Some days I'm proud of that choice. Other days, I stand at Margaret's grave and wonder if she'd be proud of me. I like to believe God will judge me fairly, understanding I tried to do right. But I also think he may ask, Richard, you had the power to extend grace. Why didn't you? I have no good answer. If my story moved you, or if you have your own grandparent stories about family betrayal or hard choices, please share them in the comments. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already subscribed, these stories matter, and your support helps keep them alive. Thank you for listening all the way through. I know these aren't easy stories to hear. One more note, the stories on this channel contain fictionalized elements for educational purposes. They're meant to teach, to warn, to inspire reflection. If that's not for you, that's okay. But if you're staying, welcome. Let's learn from each other's mistakes. God bless.